Well, hi, Hailley. Thank you so much for being part of our series here at Remote Collective. And I'm so excited to interview you and talk to you about remote work. I know we're both like really big advocates for it. So maybe you can share with everyone where you work and what your part is in all of this.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. So I work at Buffer, and we are a suite of social media tools. So if you use social media, you might have used us, but we're also a fully distributed company. So we have no office. We all work from wherever we are happiest and most productive around the world. And for me, I currently work in Colorado Springs, and I've been with Buffer for 3.5 years now.
That's amazing. And you were saying you are originally from Canada, right?
I am, yeah. I'm originally from a small town outside of Toronto, but
That's great.
remote work is beautiful in that it doesn't really matter where I live. I can still have a career.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love talking to you guys, everyone at your company, because I get nerdy about remote work and I can tell that everyone in your company really cares. And it's also like super
Yeah.
customer first, super, our team comes first, our culture comes first. And those are all things I get on board with. So I want to ask you about, you were saying like maybe I'm one of the people that can just really talk about how remote work plays out in your company. So one thing that I've noticed when I've been talking to teams is there's two kind of different angles of remote work. There's the actual systems of like, what tools do we use? How do we actually make this work on a practical level? But then I think the bigger issue is a lot of times is the culture. How do we
Mm.
integrate people? How do we make people feel connected? How do we make sure our KPIs are met? Blah, blah, blah. So let's tackle, I think it's the boring one first, but I do think it's essential, the systems first. So how do you guys make it work on a practical level? Because how many people do you guys have in your company?
We're about 85.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It
so,
is a lot of people.
so if you have any tips or anything that you can share with people about like how that works on a systems level, I would love to hear that.
Yeah, in terms of tools, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, okay, well, we use a lot of different things. We have a lot of different systems. One of the big things for us is that we are spread out around the world. So I think that what's interesting is with some remote companies, they're like all in one time zone. They're all, it's like you can all be remote, but you're all in the US. So it's easier to catch each other online and work synchronously.
Mhm.
That's not the case for us. Just our marketing team, we're in, I think, 7 different time zones and we're 9 different people. So that's a lot of
That's a
different
lot.
time zones. So we do focus on asynchronous work quite a bit. And what that means is being able to do my work and then pass it over to someone without them having to be online
Yeah.
necessarily. So some of the things that we use for more synchronous, like day to day, would be Slack. Of
Cool.
course, we use Zoom as well, which is what we're using for this interview.
Mhm.
We actually do our whole company all hands on Zoom. We do all
Oh,
hands
really?
every other month, and we usually get about 70 people on Zoom. And it's like
Wow.
so impressive how well Zoom works for that.
We're like
Um,
advocating for Zoom here.
yes, Zoom works really well for that. So yeah, Slack, Zoom. We use Threads. It's I think the website is threads.io. They're a
Cool.
newer tool that we're really loving in terms of just like writing things out asynchronously and then sharing them with your team, and then it'll go to your Slack as well, and then everyone can
Nice.
respond in the thread. We use Trello for a couple of different things as well. I'm probably forgetting a few. We try to stay away from email internally, and we use
Mhm.
Threads for that instead.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, sort of, I think, pretty general stack of remote work tools.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Is there anything that you've found like obstacles along the way when it comes to the systems or tech or whatever that you've realized like, wow, this does not work for a remote team, or like this works really well? Like you were saying Zoom works really well,
Mm,
but is there ones that like, I guess things along the way that maybe other people can learn from?
that's a good question. Well, one system that we have in place is what we call the 10 Slack agreements at Buffer. And a lot of these are just around the fact that you don't have to be on Slack all day. And I think that that is something that I see a lot of newer people that join Buffer struggle with as well. Is we have Slack and we do use it, but we don't expect people to be on there all day. It's not
Yeah.
just like an open meeting that everyone's expected to be at all day. We use it for intentional communication. So I think one mistake that I often see is people are like, oh, logging onto Slack, that's how I get to the office in the morning. What we try to lean towards is like, you start your day whenever you start your day with whatever work, and we trust that you're
Mhm.
doing work. And then whenever it feels good to use Slack, then you use Slack, but we don't expect like logging in and logging off of Slack to be like starting and ending your day.
I totally agree with that. I think a lot of people are replacing or not doing it on purpose, but they're accidentally replacing the FaceTime of being in the office with like the online button of Slack. Like,
Yeah.
like I'm trying so hard to show that I'm at work instead of just being able to go get my work done. Yeah.
And I think that's super common with people, especially who haven't worked remotely before and aren't used to not having people watch them work. Because if you're in an office, or if you, especially like open offices are very popular, everyone sees when you show up, they see when you leave, they see that you're doing work. And it can be kind of uncomfortable to go from that scenario to like, I'm just sitting at home in my office at home.
Yeah.
And my boss doesn't know the exact time that I log in or log off, but he knows that I get my work done.
Yeah, for sure. So do you guys, I guess that's the question is, do you guys do more project-based stuff or like, or like KPIs and measurable things in that way? Or do you do that? Or because I think some teams I've talked to, they're like, do I need to do a log on, log off system? Do I need to just like give them a project, have them work on it? What works best for you guys?
Yeah, so I guess it depends on the team that you're on at Buffer. Most of the teams, I would say, are project-based and just goals-oriented. And are you reaching your goals? Our customer advocacy, our customer support team is a little bit different because we have people in specific time zones because we want them working during their working hours, because we want a really large range of coverage for our customer support, essentially. So for them, there's a little bit more of like, okay, we just want to know when you're on and when you're off so that we know what times are covered and what times aren't covered.
That makes sense, especially when you're replying to customer like support tickets and everything. You need to make sure someone's there.
Yeah. We've done some like live chatting in the past as well. For that, you definitely need people online. But it's great. I mean, that's one of the benefits of remote work is we have people in every time zone. We're covering the whole world with customer
That's amazing.
support.
And honestly, I think I can say from my perspective, that makes you guys look bigger. I mean, you guys are a big company, but it makes you look like you have more employees than you do because you guys are so like spread out.
I definitely see that. We often get mistaken for being a much larger company, and I'm always trying to figure out like, okay, what is it that people are seeing and what is it that we're doing? And I do think that the time zones and being spread out is definitely a part of it.
That's awesome. That's cool. Okay. Well, one thing before we go into culture is I want to talk about your state of remote work. So can you tell people, give a pitch about that? Cause I think it's really cool. I just sent it to someone the other day when they're asking me for stats of remote work. So like organically I'm sharing this just because it's really good content, but if you can tell people what it is, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so this was our second year doing this, where essentially we wanted to interview remote workers, to survey them and to just be like, what's working, what's not working, how's everything going, where do you work from, how much money do you make? A lot of those kinds of questions that I feel like I hadn't seen a lot of studies and data on this before, since we did this 2 years ago for the first time.
Nice.
And we also are in a really fortunate position where we just have access to a lot of remote workers, not just through our team, but through our network. We have a lot of remote workers that follow Buffer. So I felt quite fortunate in being able to get, this year we had over 2,000 people respond to the surveys. It was almost like 2,500. But yeah, we just sort of looked at like, what are the struggles of remote work? What do people love about remote work? One of my favorites is, do you plan on working remotely for the rest of your career? Like most people said yes. I think we had 95% of respondents. Of those over 2,000 people said yes, they plan on working remotely for the rest of their careers. So questions like that sort of dig into remote work, because I think for people who aren't in remote work, it can still be quite a mystery.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, I'm such a community person, but I think data makes it so that people, you don't want to measure. I think data makes it so that people can quantify and be like, oh, wow, this is a bigger thing than just some trend that's going to go away in a year. It's like, no, this is the way our workforce is shifting. Maybe it won't be completely remote for everyone, but I think the option for remote will be a big shift in the future.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I really liked about the study too was just shedding light on some parts of remote work that you might not always see, because I think a lot of people might experience remote work if they don't do remote work through people like on Instagram, and they just see them, like traveling and they're working from a pool and now they're working from a hammock and all of those kinds of things. Whereas most people in the survey worked from home. Very few people even worked from co-working spaces. But we also asked about those biggest struggles of remote work, because I think it's important to shed light on that. And if there are things that aren't working in remote work, to work on it, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's also why we created this documentary series, because I was so tired of people assuming that I just had a coconut on the beach with my laptop, where there's no possibility of Wi-Fi even near there. But everyone's taking photos with it, and it's just like, come on. But yeah.
Those are staged, yeah, because it's like sand in the laptop. That's
all of us who actually work remotely were like, no, why would you do that?
That would be so tough.
Yeah. So I appreciate you guys doing that. Please keep going with it, because I think it really helps everyone. So thank you. And I guess maybe that's a question I have. A lot of people ask is like, why is Buffer so, or why are you guys so advocate? I asked this to your teammate last night at the event that we had, was like, why did you guys take this stand about like supporting remote work?
Yeah, that goes back a long ways in the history of Buffer, where there was a moment where the company was quite small and there was a chance that we could all live and work in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
But it was ultimately decided that we wanted people to be, like I'd mentioned earlier, to be able to live and work where they felt happiest and most productive. And that came from a place of just wanting to support a really happy workforce at Buffer. And so we've been supporting remote work from the beginning because of that. And we actually decided not to have an office because we didn't want to create that situation where we had like half the people are remote and half are in an office, which could be a struggle for communication. I know that some people are definitely making it work, but we're at that size where we could consciously make that decision. So yeah, we made that decision. And then in the years since, it's just been proven to be such a benefit in terms of hiring. We can now hire people around the world. We don't have to rely on one city having the talent that we're looking for. We can hire people anywhere. And then, like I was mentioning too, in terms of customer support and even engineering, we're covering all of these time zones, even though we're fewer than 100 people in our company. To have people in so many countries is a massive advantage.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think that goes into everything I've seen of just like being able to your hiring is from the whole globe. Everyone gets the flexibility of like working where they want to. So people like are really dedicated to their jobs, all of the above. So I think it's amazing. I mean, I was just speaking to someone at HubSpot and they were saying about like hybrid teams, this and that. I think no matter what you have is if you have the right culture, I think you can do both. But I mean, I'm personally remote first. So I'm like, I think it's really cool that you guys are spearheading the way with a remote first company. So this is where I want to talk about the culture. Like, how are you guys able to make people feel connected, productive, all of the above while working remote?
Yeah, there are a lot of different ways. And we actually have an entire people team dedicated to working on this, which I think is quite unique. So
That's
like
cool.
we have someone on our team and her job is team engagement manager.
Wow.
Like she is focused on making sure that we're engaged. But so there are a lot of different ways. We use Zoom for meetings as well. So I think that face-to-face time, even if it's virtual or remote, is good for getting to know your colleagues. So we do use Zoom for our meetings. We also use Donut, which is an app that will pair everyone in Slack up for a pair call every week. So I'll get paired with someone that I might not usually talk to because we don't work together. So just a chance to sort of like bump into people. We do have retreats once a year. We all get together in person, so you're definitely going to you're definitely going to meet everyone. But then we also have on like a team basis, so I'm on the marketing team, so the marketing team gets together once a year as well. So it's twice a year that I'm seeing Buffer people. So we do still have that in-person element. But then yeah, just in terms of other culture things, I think there are a lot. We're really strong on our values. We have 6 Buffer values that we really live by, and I think that living by those values and sharing them with the company and truly acting on them and asking like, oh, well, does this relate to transparency? Is there a way for us to be transparent here? Or whatever the question might be, really does bring us closer together. But I think that we still have a very, very strong culture, even being remote.
And do you think that the async communication, so again, to me, that's a new term, but now I'm seeing it pop up everywhere, basically just like where you don't expect someone to respond right away, right? Do you feel like that helps with your culture, or how does that play into it? Because I've just been researching this, within remote work a lot. And I'm wondering, because I've seen more companies that do remote first, they're very advocate for async communication.
Yeah, I think one of the ways that it plays into our culture is that it makes people who are in different time zones not have to worry about being online, right? So like one of my colleagues, well, 2 of my colleagues on the marketing team, one is in Singapore and one is in Australia. We have very little overlap with me here in Colorado, but they don't need to worry about like, oh, I have to get online at like 7 a.m. or whatever it is so that they can get in touch with me. They can just live their lives normally, even though they're not in the same time zone as the rest of their colleagues, and not have to stress about that. So I think async communication goes a long way in making sure that everyone on the team feels like they can live a normal life.
Okay, that's cool. I love that. I think that's like a really healthy thing to do, because we're all already so addicted to our phones and all of our social media and our Slack and everything. So anything to balance that out, I think is good.
Hey, that's one of the challenges that remote workers have, is unplugging.
Yeah, I think so. I was talking to someone about this, about like the trust factor, like some companies that are considering letting their people work remote. They're like, can we trust them? Can we do this and that? And I was telling them like, it's the opposite problem. It's the problem of like, that they are probably going to work too much. They probably don't have that balance of, do you see that within your teams or hiring?
We definitely see that on our team, especially people who are going from offices to remote work. And then I've seen that with myself too, where it's like all of a sudden, especially where I am, I have all these pets walking around that people have probably seen in the video, but I don't have anyone coming up to me. If I go and get some tea, I'm not going to, it's not going to turn into a 30-minute conversation. So I think it's very easy to get lost in your work because there's so few distractions I've found working from home because, I'm just here to work. I'm just, sitting in this office and I'm going to get work done. And we've definitely seen that with new people as well, where it's like, oh, all of a sudden I'm not distracted and I can do all this deep focus work. And then it's 8 p.m. and they're like, oh, I'm still working. I should probably, and then we have to have a conversation around like balance and like how to unplug and like when to shut your laptop and just leave it alone for the night and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think that's interesting that like employers almost need to, I've noticed that they're kind of taking on themselves to go the opposite direction instead of like encouraging employee engagement. It's like, wow, we are too engaged. We need to step it back so we don't get burnt out because there's a balance in the middle, right?
Yeah, there absolutely is. And I just think it's something to be so conscious of with remote work is that you never know what someone's full day looks like. And a lot of the time it can be very focused or it can just be very like, laptop driven. And then you have to make sure that people have the tools and then also just like that they understand that they can step away and take breaks and that that's accepted and that they're not expected again to be on Slack all day and just responding immediately to everything.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for letting me interview you. Do you have any last words or last thoughts or anything about remote work or offer anything that you want to share with everyone?
Oh gosh.
I know that's a lot.
That's a big one. I would say, one of the last things, just since I touched on this earlier, we do ask people about the struggles in remote work. Some of the biggest struggles, so I mentioned unplugging. The other two are loneliness and communication. And I would just say for anyone running remote teams or working remotely, I would want them to go into it knowing that communication can be a challenge. This has to be very intentional. You have to have guidelines. And especially it's more difficult if you're the one remote work person and everyone else is in an office having conversations that you can't see. And then, loneliness, it's like I've moved several times while being remote, and it is really difficult to make friends in a new city when you're sitting at home alone all day and all of your interaction is happening, via Zoom. So I think that for people going into remote work or for people working remotely that might be feeling that they're struggling, I think just being aware of some of these issues and that there are so many ways to remedy them, but just making sure that they're conscious of them going into it so that they don't get blindsided by it.
Yeah. And they're not the only ones. The fact that everyone's facing it,
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's cool. Well, thank you so much, Hailley. I think this is going to be super beneficial for everyone. And thanks for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Good luck with everything. And good luck with your pup. Wait, can we show everyone your puppy?
Oh my gosh. They're both just lying on the ground. They're just lying on the ground, playing with a blanket.
That is a good life right there.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I hope you enjoy and have a good day. Have fun in Colorado. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye, Brittnee.